channel. See, I told you it was going to be recorded. Um, I am going to share my screen with you, and I've prepared a PowerPoint. The way I see this going tonight, we will start with the PowerPoint, and I'm just going to kind of prime the pump, and then I would like to hear your insights and what your experience has been, and kind of get a sense from the community. All right, so my presentation tonight is on expectations. And some of you are familiar with um, the Charles Dickens book, Great Expectations. And the theme of this book is basically that people have a conception of what life is going to be like for them, and they try to live that out and be happy in it. But oftentimes they find out it's not what they thought it was going to be. And the main character in the story, Pip, he thinks if he was only well off, if he was only wealthy, he would be happy. And he comes into a great deal of money, and it does not give him happiness. And it's kind of a a parable about life and how we make our expectations. Um, Life is rarely ever what we expect. In the Bible, there's a book called Ecclesiastes, and Solomon does kind of the same thing, where he says he has the wherewithal to do anything he wants to do in life. He has the money, he has the position, he has the authority, and so he decides, I'm going to try everything and see if it makes me happy. And he comes to the end realizing that there is no happiness to be found in all those things. So I want to talk, I'm going to kind of use my own story to get us started. And I'm hoping that the rest of us are willing to share out later on. So I first started in writing. I was writing letters to my mom and telling her all the crazy things that my son was doing. And I mean crazy things. Like one day I was sitting writing my mom, and I look up and my son comes around the corner from the kitchen, and he has the syrup bottle in his hand, and it's turned upside down, and he's sucking syrup out of the syrup bottle. And I would just tell my mom all the crazy things that Jeremy did. And one day she said, "You know, you can really write well. I think you should try to write a book." And I said, "Okay, I will. I'll try to write a book." So I did. I wrote a book. Kind of book I like, uh, a thriller, techno thriller. It was all about this guy that had learned how to control the weather and was going to destroy the planet. He was kind of maniacal, suicidal, decided to take the planet with him. And I really liked the book. Well, I got an agent. I contacted an agent, sent him a query letter, and he liked the story, and he took me on, and he was a big Hollywood agent. Um, and then he said to me, he said, "You know, we went through the whole book, we did the editing, we got it all clean and everything." And he said, "You know, I think you have a better book in you. This is a good book, but I think this should be your second book. I think your first book should be a better book." He said, "Take a month and come back and pitch me a better book." I said, "Okay." So I went back, and meanwhile, I'm working full time. I'm a teacher and I'm doing all these other things. I'm a father. And I put together a pitch for a different story, much better story. And he was thrilled. He goes, "That's going to be the big one. That's the big story." So I wrote that book. One night, he invited Debbie and I over to his apartment in West Hollywood because they were doing a movie deal. They were signing, he had another client, a guy named Steve Alton, and Steve Alton had written a book, and Disney was buying the rights for $2 million to make the movie. and I think it was Bantam Books was buying the rights for the book. The book he sold was the book Meg, which has since then become all these big, it's a franchise now. It's a movie franchise. But Steve Alton was the original author. Nice guy. I liked him. He and I got along really well. Well, Debbie and I go to this dinner party, and it's with the lawyers and all the bigwigs from Disney and from Bantam Books. We walk in the door, and my agent introduces me. He said, "Everybody, this is Mike Apodaca. He's the next big thing." And I thought, wow, I'm the next big thing. And I'm, of course, on our way home, we've got Debbie and I have dollar signs in our eyes. We're thinking, okay, they just gave this guy $3 million. It's going to change everything for us. So if you look at this picture, this is this is the view from the front of my mansion. Um, when I became a famous writer, I bought this property and this part of the riverfront, and I built my mansion. And this is my view. My helicopter is parked out back, in case you're wondering. Well, then reality happened. The deal fell through, and to my horror and my shock and my surprise, the agent dropped me. He put me with a much more experienced writer because I was brand new to writing. I didn't know what I was doing. I was flying by the seat of my pants. He said, "I'm going to put you with another writer and someone to help you out." Well, that other writer, he totally changed the book, changed my main character. My main character was a regular guy, and he turned him into a Navy SEAL, a Vin Diesel kind of person, and was doing all this stuff, stealing planes from the Air Force and jets and flying jets and doing all this stuff. Not my character. So he and I butted heads, and eventually my agent said, "I'm done." And he just dropped me. Well, I kind of gave up writing at that point. And because it was just too, well, actually, let me say, I did get another agent, and then 9/11 happened and that agency fell through. So at that point, I thought, I'm just going to focus on being a teacher and doing the things that I need to do. Um, I used this time as a time of reflection and reevaluation. It raised lots of questions for me. Later on, my son came up with the idea of godsend, but he was not a writer, and he asked me to write the book, and I did, and I fell in love with it. Ended up continuing to write. He lost interest and said, "You go ahead," and I ended up writing all six of those books. But here's what I discovered about writing for myself. This is just me. Oh, by the way, this is the other side of my property. This is where I go fishing. This is the other side of my mansion. So some of the here's some of the things that I get out of writing. This is where I'm at right now. And I got to move something so I can see that. Okay, number one, first thing I get out of writing is that I'm expressing myself. I am sharing my voice. And that's important to me. That is important to me that I'm able to express myself in my writing. Secondly, my ideas are finding a more permanent home. They will not die with me. And I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but your writing is a permanent record of who you are. It expresses what you value. It has your voice inside of it. My daughter once told me, she said, when I read your books, I hear your voice. How awesome is that? My grandchildren are going to hear my voice. My great grandchildren, if they ever read my stuff, they're going to hear my voice. That that is so important to me. Okay, thirdly, I am developing new tools, sharpening old ones. I'm growing as a writer. Um, the longer you are in the writing club and the more you learn and the more you write, the better writer you become. You sharpen your tools. And I've certainly improved and sharpened mine over the last few years. Number four, I'm learning to be more creative. Um, I have been going to Anita's salons, and Anita's salons many times have to do with creativity and learning new ways to express yourself. It's been very, very good for me. I'm also learning to be more observant. I'm friends with Karen Oda, and Karen Oda, like the other day, she sent me a text and a picture of half of a clamshell. And she said, someone just left this on a bench and they just left it and I took it home and I've been looking at it and feeling the textures and amazed at all the different colors inside of it and everything. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I wish I could see the world the way that Karen Oda sees the world. She'll send me a text with a picture of a bird flying, and she'll say, I just was so taken with this bird, I couldn't take my eyes off of it. I, I don't even see the bird. I don't have the observational skills that she has, but she's teaching me to be more observant. I think that's important. I understand people better. Writing has forced me to think about people's motives, their values, their limitations, um, how they react to crisis and circumstances that are difficult, how they relate to each other, how I relate to each other. I'm growing in my understanding of people. Going to Corky's and sitting around and listening to everybody's stories, it's like a study in human nature. And I understand stories better. One of the best things I've gotten out of the writing club is learning how stories are structured, learning genres, learning archetypes and um, story plots. There are only so many plots and three acts and all these different aspects of writing. The more you understand, the more you see it when you're reading and when you're watching movies and things, it all becomes real to you. Um, and it's helped me to understand movies differently. I watched a movie the other night called The Woman in the Dunes. The Woman in the Dunes. Old movie, Japanese, made in 1964. But the plot was brilliant. And honestly, I don't think I would have understood the movie had I not been a part of the writing club because I knew what to look for. I knew about character arcs. I knew about points of crisis and the times of darkness where the main character has to either make a decision or change or do something to cope with the reality of their life. And it was brilliantly done in this movie. I really enjoyed it. But I watch movies differently. Number nine, writing is great for my brain, and I am turning 70 this year. I need to be conscious of my brain health, and writing is a good thing to do to keep your brain active. Uh, I'm always looking for research and different aspects that make the writing come alive. Also, number 10, I'm leaving behind a legacy for my family. They will always know who I was. And I wish my family had done that for me. I wish I knew anything about my great grandparents or, the people behind them. I know nothing about my family because they wrote nothing. They left behind nothing. And number 11, my writing has helped others sort out their thinking on different topics, hopefully, including this one. it makes a difference, and I'm hoping that um, that I can be helpful to other writers and to my friends. So this is what I'm getting out of writing. Now, notice this. None of these involves money. There is a richness in writing that has nothing to do with money, nothing to do with whether or not we're going to get rich or famous or anything else. There are other values that I think are far more important. Okay, so what writing cannot give us? Number one, writing cannot give us an identity. It cannot give us existential value. It is not a religion. It is not wise to expect from it what it cannot offer. It's, I think this is really important because I think there are some people who, and I've seen them. I've seen them when I go up to the the main branch of the CWC, and you rub shoulders with some of the writers up there, and you can see that they're trying to get their whole identity from being writers. I'm sorry, writing cannot give you an identity. You should have an identity from something else, not from your writing. Um, it can't make people care about us. You know, it matters to me, it matters that we have a community that cares whether I live or die. You know, that matters. It matters that there are people out there who know my name, who take me seriously and who really care about me. I know that if something bad were to happen in my life, there would be a cluster of people around me who would be there for me. And I've seen that with different ones of our members who have been in tough times recently. They get swarmed with people around them saying, "What can we do to help?" And I think that's wonderful. That to me is valuable. But that doesn't come from the fact that we're writers. That comes from the fact that we're people and we care about each other. Number three, writing cannot improve our dating life. Or maybe it can. I just don't know because I don't have a dating life. So I am not an expert. I can't speak to that one. But I don't think it can improve it. Um, the reality is only 1% of writers are able to make a living writing, and a much smaller percent actually become rich and famous. Extremely important to know. And that hopefully that will lower our expectation. And I hope we have people in that 1%. I really do. And that's what we're striving for, but we have to be realistic about that. Okay, so let's talk money. Writing can be nearly free. You write, you self-publish, you take advantage of opportunities to speak and sell your books. It's it's just about even Steven, but it can cost you. Writing can cost you. Uh, Oftentimes we pay an editor to do our editing, and that costs us. We can buy business cards, bookmarks, banners, things like that for book signings. That costs us. Paying for writing conferences, books on writing, etc. All of that is an expense. And writing conferences can be very expensive. I've spent on one writing conference I went to, I spent nearly $1,000. It's they're expensive. Paying a publisher, if you want to get involved with vanity publishing, that's costly. And then paying someone to promote your work. There are people who are very happy to promote your work if you're willing to pay them to do it. Okay, so what's my plan? My plan is I want to get into every Christian venue because I'm a Christian writer that will welcome me to speak and sell my books. I want to get into homeschools, Christian colleges, churches, do retreats, anything like that, do youth meetings, wherever I can, wherever people will give me a platform, I want to do speaking engagements. And what drives me personally is my passion for my faith. I do have books that are already ready for publication. I have books that I've already published. And someday I would love to have an agent. I'm still pursuing that, but I want someone I can work with. I don't want to just have an agent to have an agent. I want somebody who I can talk to, somebody who will work with me, somebody who cares about what I'm doing and shares my vision. And that's going to be hard to find that person. I understand, but that's what I'm looking for. Um, I plan on writing the rest of my life. I'm never giving up writing. I will be constantly at my keyboard because that's what I do. I'm a writer. I want to continue publishing in magazines. I've had some success writing articles and being published in Christian magazines, and I want to keep going in that direction. So that's my plan. So I'd like to know from you guys what your journey has been like. Um, and I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish the PowerPoint and then get stop sharing and then just see if we can have a conversation and talk together. So what I'd like you to do is share your expectations, whether or not they've been realized. Have you had to change your expectations? And what are your current expectations? And do you have a plan? What's your plan for your writing life? Um, and why? So for me, why do I write? Because you write because you're a writer. That's why you write. That's the best reason to write is because you're a writer. And then I just want to thank you. Thank you for letting me share. Um, I've talked hopefully not too much, but now I'm curious as to your expectations. So anybody feel like sharing first?
I will. Most people know my story already, so I'll try to be brief. I started writing very, very early in life because my mother yelled at me and I got in trouble for telling lies. And I realized that if I wrote them down on paper, I got praised for being creative instead of punished for telling lies.
You
So
were still lying, but
still lying, but hey, if I wrote it down on paper, she thought it was cool. So, so I've been writing my whole life. I never figured I'd make any money. I write because I'm my generation's storyteller. My mother was the storyteller in her generation. I feel like I picked up the baton from her. I certainly don't make any money at it. I needed to figure out a way to make money uh, because I had to go out on disability and a lot of financial issues. I had to figure out how to make money. And I knew that I could make money if I figured it out in the writing community, but not necessarily as an author. So, one of my favorite stories, I'm a historian, has always been the very first millionaire in the state of California was the guy who very, very early on heard about the gold that they'd found at Sutter's Mill. He took his last $100 and he drove to every single store and outlet that he could drive to within a day's riding and bought up all of their mining supplies, their beans, their flour, their sugar, their coffee, everything he could afford to buy. And he brought it all in so that when the miners came in and the gold strike hit, he was the only one locally that had anything to sell them. And he became the first millionaire in the state of California, not the guys hunting for the gold. So I'm kind of that store owner in that I figured, okay, I'll be an editor. And I just happen to be very, very detail oriented. I've been started reading before I was 3. I've read tens of thousands of books. I know stories. I'm so passionate about all kinds of books. And so I have turned that writing world into my business by editing other people's books. I do still write. I'm very, very proud of the book that I wrote about my mom, who had a very difficult life. I wrote a memoir about her. I smiled when Mike said his voice comes out because everybody that reads The Woman in Room 23 says, I recognized you the minute you were born. You couldn't have been anybody else. So I am part of that book too. Not only did I write it, but I'm in the book as well, paid a large part of that. So it's for me, it's not. I mean, I love to write, but if I, quite honestly, if I had to choose between writing my own book and editing Mike's next big seller or Paul's or somebody else's, I would do the editing before I would do the creative writing. That's where my passion comes in. I tell everybody if you've got a story to tell, I can make the book really good as far as making it readable is concerned, but you have to give me a story to work with. So that's my passion more than it's creative because, but I'm being creative with somebody else's stuff. Um, and you have to, I have to pay attention to Mike Apodaca's voice over Richard Spencer's voice over CJ Barry's voice. You have to know those ins and outs of things, but that's where my passion is. And I'm certainly not getting rich. My mansion isn't going up next to Mike's on his 50 acres in Colorado or wherever that was. But I'm happy. I'm pleased. I know that I'm leaving my legacy in that I've I've got these almost 250 books now that I've edited that I know that I've that's my legacy is making other people's books better than they could have been. So I'm still in the writing world and it's still creative, but it's not producing the books.
But you're comfortable and you're happy with where you're at.
Yes, all of my bills are paid. I don't owe anybody any money except my mortgage. I pay off my credit card every month. I've got plenty of food on my table. My roof doesn't leak. I've got heat in my house. Uh, am I wealthy? Absolutely not. Do I worry about paying my bills? No. So I'm good where I am. I don't need to be wealthy.
And you have
I
friends.
I do. I was going to say I'm wealthy. I'm wealthy in my passion. My wealth is my books. Sometimes when I get down and get depressed, I have about 3,400 books in my house, literally in every room of the house except the bathrooms. And I just sit and look at my books and I think, wow, look at all of this. I can read this one next and I can read this one next. And I'll share with Mike this. I'm reading this series about this book about this guy that has this publishing company and he's teaching me, it's just I just get almost uncontrollably passionate when I start talking about my books and the things that I like to read and sharing my passion with other people. And that's where my world is, and that's where my passion is in those books. People that, and one last thing, and then I will shut up. I get a little irritated. I know that they're not necessarily a reader when somebody walks into my house and looks around and says, "Whoa, have you read all of these books?" And I look at them and I think, no, because if I had read them all, they would no longer be on my shelf because they would have gone to make room for the ones I haven't read yet. So I have maybe 100 books that I have kept that I have read that mean something to me, and I have a very very large selection of World War II reference books, probably about 1,000 books that are just on World War II. But all of my novels, very very few of them do I keep because I need to make room for the ones that I haven't had a chance to read yet. So that's my passion.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Next, who wants to go next and tell us what your expectations were getting into writing? Have those expectations changed? What are your expectations now? And what's your plan? What's your plan going forward?
Oh, and my plan is to continue as long as I possibly can.
Hey, we're good
Sorry.
with that plan. We're good with that. Keep it up. Mr. Spencer, you look like you're ready to share. Please.
Oh, yes. Well, why not? Um, I'm a late bloomer. I didn't start writing till 4 years ago. So that would have put me at 76 when I started writing. No, 75 when I started. Um, I've been a storyteller all my life, but it's been oral. Um, and essentially, I got into writing because it was getting more and more difficult to do my woodworking. Um, but as I started writing, um, I really enjoyed writing that first book. I had never done anything of that caliber. Um, and most people think it came out pretty good. Um, Now, my expectation was not to make a lot of money. I didn't figure that was in the cards. You said it earlier, 1% of the hundreds of thousands of authors make a living at it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a, a huge number of writers that can't make a living from their writing attempt to make a living off other people that are trying to make a living writing.
That's right.
Um, so my expectation actually was to make $500 a month. If I could have made $500 a month from the books, I would have considered it a roaring success. Now, I have yet to break even because Jenny took all my money. uh, so I have not made my $500 a month. So that expectation has not been met. Um, I have learned a great deal about marketing and promotion, and uh, it's a hard row to hoe, as a lot of people have found out. So I have been forced to not abandon anything. But Einstein said it that, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Mm-hmm.
So I've decided to quit beating my head against the same wall that doesn't seem to be producing much. My new plan is I got it primarily from the guy who will be speaking in 2 months. Johnny B. Trout will be our Zoom speaker at the meeting in March. And he wrote a book called The Artisan Author. We put our books on Kickstarter at the same time. My book generated $534 on Kickstarter, which was okay because that was higher than my goal. Johnny B. Trout's book netted him $27,000. Johnny knows something I don't. But the one of the big points in his book is it's a grassroots kind of marketing. Even today, with the money that he's made, Johnny is somewhere selling his books 30 times a year. Somewhere. He's not particular. He'll go to a street fair, set up his table, and sell his books. He does. He's a speaker. I believe, I believe that Johnny was a speaker at the last Author Nation. It's a big writers conference in Vegas. Mm-hmm. Over 2,000 people went to the one this past November. So when it starts to warm up and we get some springtime going, Um, I'm going to be setting up my table and selling my books. Um, I got encouraged. I've done it now for 2 years. My wife does her painting club does a boutique in the same church that we meet. They filled that entire church with mostly hand painted uh, holiday ornaments.
Crafts. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big, huge craft show. The majority of the stuff is hand painted by the members in the club. Um, I have a lot of the stuff that I've built that I sell there. But 2 years ago, Pat convinced me to go ahead and put my books on the table. It all has to be handcrafted, everything in the show. And I wrote the book, so it's handcrafted. Um, and I put the books up. The first year I sold 17. The second year I sold 20, which is not bad when you consider it's $16 a pop. Um, so in 2 days, I made $300 or $400 just from the books. So that's worth the effort. And there's got to be 100 other venues that would uh, generate similar results. So that's my new plan.
Excellent. Excellent. CJ, you wanted to share.
Hi, everybody. I love being able to see everybody's faces since I don't make it down to the meetings. When I write because of words in my head that have to get out. That's the only way I can say it. Like I've got to get them out, and people tend to like to hear them. So when I I hope, like, I have my first book published, and when I published it, I just hoped it would go on a shelf and someone would pick it up someday and that it would help them. And I find that social media does that very well, that the words that I would like to share get out there and do that. Um, I want to publish again. I have plans, I'm working on them, rebuilding the book I read into well, you'll see. I'm working. I'm on a journey, and my book is my journey. So I keep writing to heal me, and the words get out, and it keeps healing. So if you follow me on my social media, you'll see that my journey was taking me towards the firewalk, and it left me this weekend with an arrow at my throat. So if you want to know what happened, you'll have to go on my social media and see what happened with that instead of a firewalk. So quite intense things were um I'm I believe deeply, deeply in choice. And I believe deeply in not accepting the path that's in front of us and creating a new path. And that when we do that, that we create a new path for our children to walk and for generations to come. And I can't just not. So my life is creating this new path, and I write about it. In my goal in the future, talk about expensive classes, going to the wellness classes that I go to for me personally, and I write about is expensive. The upside of that is they're a write-off because I write about them and I sell those
Mhm.
books. So my wellness journey is also tax deductible. So there's a plus in that, right? Um, but my future goals um, are just to keep going, right? To keep going because there's not an end to this. If I keep the words inside of me, I get crazy. I can't do it. They want to get out. I have to let them out, and so I let them out. But eventually, because I when I did the open mic, I absolutely love that, and I would like to eventually get back to that to where I have my own shop. Ultimate goal, have my own bookstore, right? Have my own bookstore, my own place to hold creative writing meetings, to hold open mics for authors to come in, and to hold a safe place for women and those in the LGBTQ plus community to feel complete love and accepted within a garden of love. So especially those within the witchy community, just to be completely wrapped up in the mother. So those are my goals, and that's where I'm going. What was your other question? Did I miss one?
No, no, I wanted to focus on something you said about
Mm-hmm.
healing. Um,
Yes.
I agree. I'm just finishing my memoir, and it's amazing when you go back and you look at your past and you learn to understand and reevaluate and process things. It can be extremely healing.
Oh,
CJ,
so much.
if you would just for a minute tell us about the coming Act Two next month.
Oh, we have so much planned for you guys. It's amazing. So Vanessa, actually, I have it right here because we were working on it this afternoon. She has written this book called Decoding Your Brilliance, a guide to unleashing your unique advantage. And she talks a lot about um, getting into your own groove, right? That so often we find something. So exactly what Jenny was saying, right? She loves books and she loves writing. And when she found her groove was editing, that's where the energy flowed for her, right? And for Vanessa, it's with business. She loves books, she loves writing. And when she got into her own groove on the business side of it, is where it started to flow for her. And so we're going to do a podcast style interview with, I'm going to be interviewing her. So we're very excited about that. Just diving in deep, getting the questions that I know I need on the business side, and I'm sure we all need on the business side. Like, help me. I like to write a book, and I don't know what to do on the other side of that. So, and also just in finding that groove, right? And finding that passion and making sure that, we're in there, we're where we need to be. I am my weakness, I would say not my weakness, but my go-to strategy when life gets difficult is a distractor. And I find all kinds of ways to distract myself. And writing is one of them. It's a distraction as well. But the gift of being a distractor is I'm very creative. So I imagine a lot of us in here are distractors. We find lots of ways to distract ourselves. But we're also highly creative. And I was going somewhere with that. Um, I got distracted. And so finding those key people in our lives that can help us stay on track and being able to build that mycelial network around ourselves, right?
Mhm.
That we don't have to be standalone. And so often I always feel like I need to stand alone. And I'm learning this deeply is to build that mycelial network around me. And Vanessa is a key piece in that for me. And she's been really helpful and supportive of me on this journey. So I'm excited to be able to introduce her to the to the class and, and go from there. But yeah, so just lots of exciting things coming, I think. And creativity, I think, is the answer to everything. We have choice and we have choice to create. And that's what we do. And we keep creating and we keep creating and we keep creating. And it's beautiful.
So I'm gonna refresh just for the people that came in late. What we're doing at this point is we're talking about what were your expectations when you first started writing? How have those expectations changed as you've been writing for some time? And what is your plan for the future? Where are you going from here?
Oh,
So
and you can get something like this date book. I don't know if you can see it and plan it all out.
that's
That
right.
way you stay on target.
So who wants to share next? We have about 10 minutes left. And Anita, would you please share?
Sure. Um, Back in the days of dial-up internet, oops, hang on a second. My phone is making happy noises. There we go. Um, Back in the days of dial-up internet, I was part of a listserv. And I was working a very stressful job. I've had a lot of those over the years. And one of the things I used to do to decompress is I was on a listserv for people who had Bichon Frise dogs, little white foofy dogs. And first I had one, and then I had three. And so on this listserv where people were writing in with questions about grooming and training issues and all sorts of things like that, I would write little funny stories about my dogs, and I made sure that the stories would fit in the window that the listserv posts were in. And Mike, you mentioned your Christian background and focus. At the time, I was pastor, and I had promised my family that I would never, ever use them as sermon illustrations. I don't do that. And because I said, I'd get your permission first, and what if I go off script? So forget that. However, the dogs never had an issue with me telling stories about them. And so what was really cute was people in my various congregations would tell me, oh, because the first Bichon I had was Molly Dog. And they would come to see me before church or after church or during the week, and they'd say, I had a Molly Dog sighting. And what they meant was they saw a little foofy dog like Molly. And so anyway, I wrote a lot of little short, cute things like that. And I wrote some articles and, wrote a lot of stuff that was work related. But I enjoyed doing the humorous stuff or the lighthearted stuff. And it never occurred to me to write a novel. I was looking at short stories and had done a few. And for many years, too, I corresponded with a lot of people, like, no joke, over 200 people. I had lots of pen pals all over the place, people that I had met and some I'd never met. But anyway, I did a lot of writing for work. More recently, when we moved out here, I was doing policies and procedures at the hospital, and the jargon was such that it was really difficult for someone to pick up a policy and procedure and actually figure out what the heck it said. And sometimes in the hospital, that's kind of important that you know what those words mean and the sentences are well constructed. So I got very involved in simplified English, the simplified English movement for professional papers. And also my dad was kind of a language geek, and I'm kind of a language geek. And in fact, Giles Brandreth, if you're familiar with him, I'm a Giles Brandreth fan. And if you come to, shameless plug, my salon, you will find out about Giles. But he has stories that go along with things about grammar and writing. It's not just, oh, well, this is the rule, but it's stories about that. And that's what I like to do. So in the midst of all of this, lo and behold, I find myself taking a short story, turning it into a novel. That didn't really go well, but, and that was several years going. And then finally I came up with my longer work and writing poetry. In terms of making money, I absolutely don't see my books making money for me. And it'd be great if I made enough just on a regular day to be able to do deductions, but that ain't going to happen. So saves paperwork. But yeah, I don't have to worry about going to conferences and being able to deduct it because, yeah, nope. But I'm really enjoying the series. I'm enjoying how I'm becoming a better writer. And I'm looking at putting together a chapbook of poetry because I have had a lot of people ask when they see some poems I've written, well, where can I find your poems tree? And it's like, well, there's one over there and there's one over there and there's one over there. And so, yeah, with poetry, it's kind of challenging. So I'm going to put together a chapbook. I'll be working on that this year, but also working on my other books. And I I've discovered not so much my own because it's hard to hold yourself out at arm's length, but I have discovered I am a really good proofreader. Um,
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
I am a very skilled proofreader. So I'm getting some education in that and honing my skills and looking not to be an editor like Jenny. I don't want to rewrite anybody's stuff, but I can proofread your stuff, dagnabbit, and to look and work with that. And I have quite a few friends through my co-working through FocusMate who are copywriters, and they're telling me, "Oh, you should do copywriting. You should do copywriting." And the problem with me for copywriting is, what if I don't really give a rip about what the company that hires me wants me to write about? I had that same issue when I was doing voiceover stuff and going to tryouts for that. It's like, what if I don't like your product? I mean, I never asked them that ever, ever, ever. But so, yeah, I'm going to think about copywriting. That's another goal. Think about copywriting for this year. But I enjoy doing it. I don't have multitudes of people who are my offspring who are coming behind me. So, yeah, if somebody remembers me, that's great. If they don't, I get it too. And while my general worldview is that of a white Christian woman, an older white Christian woman, I don't see myself as a Christian writer. And my stuff kind of goes in different directions. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm looking at, and I'm enjoying it. And I enjoy the camaraderie of being with other writers and having us all become better writers through our connections. So that's it.
Absolutely. No, and what I hear from you, Anita, is contentment, happiness, and what I've always admired about you is that you have such a wide life. You have so many interests and you do so many things, and there just isn't time here to recount them all, but it's you have found joy in many places, not just writing and not,
Yeah,
not any one thing. You live a
yeah,
very full life.
yeah. Well, yeah, thank you. I do. And sometimes I wonder, how do I get this busy? But anyway, one of my professors in seminary had this marvelous idea. And we told him it was so good, and he was teaching it to us. And it was how to analyze the Greek New Testament. And we said, you should write a book. And he said, I looked into that. He says, and I can make more on one Sunday morning being a guest speaker than I could make probably in a couple of months of selling my book.
Yeah.
And we all sort of went, oh. But yeah, I'm also thinking about traveling. But now I got two dogs, and it's harder to travel to speak with two little dogs at home. So we'll see. But I'm also an award-winning, pat my back, speaker.
Oh, that's
So
right. That's another element. That's another
yeah, it's
element.
another thing and another thing and another thing, and I'll hush because otherwise I'll get yeah.
We only have a couple more minutes. Is there anyone else that would like to share? I don't want to have anybody feel like they wanted to share and we're not given the opportunity. Anybody else? Your expectations, how they changed, where you are now. Mr. Raff, if you could please share with us.
Oh, for back in the days of the dinosaurs and cavemen. I was a teenager. We moved from Chicago to California, and I was at a very difficult time. And I wrote some. I was writing. I was already writing for 5 years, and I wanted to be a writer for a living, and I had these high expectations. And I sent my stories in. They weren't horror stories; they were just regular slice of life stories. Such magazines as Playboy and other men magazines, more action kind of magazines and stuff, And I got these rejection slips, and I was like, because I was a sensitive guy, I was devastated. And I thought maybe a career as a writer is not such a good idea. So I struggled for a few years, and I ended up as a psychiatric technician. Decided I'll do that, and I'll write as a hobby. And when I retire, I'll write more and see where it goes. And the lower expectation. I really didn't have to figure it out at the moment. So you're looking at decades later. When I retired, my hobbies. I had 7 horror stories I could make into a book called Seven Tales of Terror, and I had a special, like halfway done by then, and I finished it up and had it published, self-published. By the time I joined this club back 15 years ago this month, so it's my anniversary. Yeah.
Yes.
So since then, I've published 10 books. I'm working on my 11th, and my expectations now are more modest, but I have more successes in the success column than finding a traditional publisher agent, and I'm not worried about it anymore with the age and stuff. But I have written the 10 books. That's in the column, the positive column. I've self-published 10 books, working on 11. That's in the column. A traditional publisher did publish 2 of my stories. That's another publish. Plus, I'm in a writer's club, learning things and sharing my experiences. That's another. So there's a lot, and, I'm happy about it. Plus, Roberta Smith and I started Nevermore Enterprises. We've sold a lot of books. I just did my used sales tax thing, and I conservatively, I couldn't figure out exactly. It's probably more, but I had to claim $550, and got charged
Wow.
accordingly. And it's probably more, but that's the best I'm going to do. And last year was the same. And we got another event coming up. I'm hoping to sell a lot of books. And we've had our own events. We've had guest stars, Boris Karloff's only child. We had Julie Adams from The Creature from the Black Lagoon. We've had a clairvoyant do her magic. And I just feel like there's other successes out there too that come along, and they might not be as grandiose, but they certainly feel good. And the writing is the most important thing, because I screwed up tonight. I forgot about the meeting. I was on a roll. I wrote thousands of words today. And you know what? I just feel really great about it. That's the most gratifying thing of everything, of it all. Whether it's published or not, whether I finish this book or not, it'd be my 11th. It felt great writing. Then I get this text from I go, oops. So I was on a roll, and that roll, when you get on a roll, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's it.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I'd like to just summarize what I've heard you guys saying and what I feel personally. There's a richness of being in a writing club, and this writing club in particular. I don't think I've ever been a part of anything that has been as much fun, where I've enjoyed. I look at all your faces and I just have great affection for all of you. This has been and it continues to be a very, very important part of my life. And it has a richness of its own, something that I value and I treasure. And like I said, if anything were to happen to any of us, I know we'd be there for each other. And the writing and the development and our keeping our brains sharp and all that rest of that what goes into that, I think is all very valuable. I do hope I look at Richard Spencer and I think, people people around the world should know Richard Spencer. His book is so good. And Mike Raff too. My gosh, your books are amazing. I keep thinking, when are they going to find you and make that movie? Out of Skeleton Man, come on. But there's a richness, there's such talent and creativity in this group. I can't think of any place I'd rather be. So um, take heart. I know our expectations are not always fulfilled, but if you can focus on what we have, not on what we don't have. Go ahead, Jenny.
One of the things that is really important to me is knowing that I've got an outlet to talk about my passion. I try to talk to my brother or my sister or my housekeeper, and they just roll their eyes and change the subject. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I bought a new vacuum and I this and I that. But knowing that I have some place to go that I can share my passion with, and people don't just get up and walk away and go, "She's nuts." It's just it is so important, and I think we all need that. Writing is a very, very solitary thing, but it's also very social because once we've written something, we need to talk to somebody and tell them how good it is. So
Yeah, yeah. I've compared our club to what was happening in France during the Impressionists, where Van Gogh and Degas and Renoir and all these people would get together and they all understood each other. Gertrude Stein, and they all understood each other. Picasso, they understood what each other was thinking and going through, and the struggles of being an artist. But nobody else would understand it. Their own families didn't understand it, but we understand each other, and that is a really big plus, being with people who understand. All right, folks, I am going to call this meeting to an end. Thank you so much for being here, and happy writing.